In this episode, we look at 3 different similar crimes. And each segment starts off with me reading an article about the crime, and then I offer my points of view and thoughts about that case. In the early hours of June 5th, 2002, a man broke into the home of Ed and Louise Smart in the Federal Heights neighborhood of Salt Lake City, where they lived with their 6 children. He abducted 14-year-old Elizabeth Smart from the bedroom she shared with her 9-year-old sister, Mary Catherine. Mary Catherine was awakened but pretended to be asleep, and later reported that the man was white, about the height of her brother Charles, 5 foot 8 inches tall, about 30 to 40 years of age, and wearing light-colored clothes and a golf hat. The man had dark hair and also had dark hair on his arms and on the back of his hands. The man threatened Elizabeth with a knife. She never got a good look at the man's face. Ed Smart had hired some homeless people, men, to help do some yard work at his house. And he was doing this as to be nice, or to offer these men an opportunity to make some money. And one of the men saw Elizabeth Smart and planned to come back and abduct her from his house. Months and months went by without finding Elizabeth Smart, and the police even believed that Ed Smart might have been involved in his daughter's disappearance, or maybe someone in their family, an uncle or another member of the larger Smart family. But eventually, Elizabeth was found and rescued. On September 17, 1991, Diane's world caved in. Diane was Heather's mother. She had taken 2 of her boys to a Boy Scout meeting that evening at the local Mormon church, leaving Heather to babysit her 5-year-old brother. Diane called at 8:30 p.m. to make sure everything was okay, meaning to tell Heather to close a window in the master bedroom she had opened, but she forgot. When Diane returned after the meeting, she noticed that the house was dark and a sliding door unlocked. At first, these details did not alarm her, but to her shock, Heather was not in her room or anywhere else in the house. Diane called everyone of whom she could think, including Mike, her ex-husband and Heather's father, but no one knew where the girl could be. She called the sheriff's office and someone came right over, but a search and rescue crew could not be sent out until daylight. The crew combed through the woods and knocked at every neighbor's door. Diane remembered the open window in the master bedroom. They examined the window's bent screen, which appeared to have been forced, and a latent fingerprint examiner dusted for prints. She managed to identify and lift a good one, so that if they found the person who bent the frame, they could make a match. About 2 years later, they found Heather's remains on Rampart Range Road, and then a year or 2 after that, they finally identified the fingerprint, and it belonged to Robert Charles Brown, a neighbor of the Church family who lived about 1 mile north of Heather on the same road. This man had raped and murdered many other women in another state, and the authorities had his fingerprint from some crime that he committed previous to this crime. He stated that he was there to burglarize the house, but why do people always believe these murderers and killers? JonBenet was enrolled in kindergarten at High Peaks Elementary School. Her parents doted on her in every way they could, giving her everything she needed to live a comfortable life. In addition to their $1 million Colorado home, the Ramseys owned a vacation home in northern Michigan. It was apparently because of the family's wealth that JonBenet became a target. Early on the morning of December 26, 1996, Patsy called the police after finding a 3-page ransom note demanding $118,000 for her daughter's safe return. The only other people believed to be at the house at that time were John and Burke, JonBenet's father and brother, and the only sign of a break-in was an open basement window. Hours later, John and a friend found his daughter lying dead in a room in their basement. JonBenet had been strangled, the official cause of death, as determined by an autopsy, with a garrote made from cord and one of her mother's paintbrushes. She also sustained a fracture to her skull, as well as bruises and abrasions on various parts of her body. There were signs she had been sexually assaulted, though DNA evidence from a perpetrator was limited. What these cases seem to have in common is a non-secured house, an open window, a broken window, an open door, an unlocked sliding glass door, and some person that's kind of in the neighborhood, that lives around there, that obviously goes around to these homes and checks for ways to get in. And in all 3 cases, there was another person in the house when the abduction took place. As we know in the JonBenet Ramsey case, the intruder hasn't been caught. So I created this list here. So he must have planned the assault on JonBenet because he knew John's name, that he had a daughter, and he assumed that he was from the South because somehow he knew John was from Atlanta, or his business was there. He must have entered and exited through the broken basement window, because John Ramsey said that he took the suitcase down to the basement some days before this happened. And when he went down to the basement while JonBenet was missing, he noticed that the suitcase was over by the wall and it didn't belong there. The intruder must have worn gloves because there's no fingerprints, or there's no foreign fingerprints on the ransom note or the notepad or on other items in the house. He must have brought the nylon cord and duct tape with him because there was no scrap pieces of cord anywhere, and there was no roll of duct tape in the Ramsey's house that matched the tape on JonBenet's mouth. And he probably didn't have a place to go after the abduction. And I've seen this in another case also. So that's why the murder took place in the basement, because he had no place to take JonBenet. I know you're a Christian, John. Would you swear to God you didn't do this? I swear to God, I didn't do it. I swear to God. this ends this episode on the JonBenet Ramsey case. And I'll see you next weekend with a better episode.